Gillian Bennett with us today, and I'm super excited because she's so warm and so friendly and so kind. Um, she really teaches people on how to change their relationship with food. And girls, you know how important this is. Um, she's got a her coaching really focuses on health mindset, but when I went to have a look at her website, she does a lot more as well than just sustainable eating habits and a positive relationship with food. She really embodies what she teaches. She's really in alignment, which I thought was super cool. Okay. She's going to talk about mindset, practice, habits, model of coaching. Feel free to put questions underneath, and I'm sure that she will answer them as well. Her background includes certifications in precision nutrition, ANEF sports nutrition, as well as a professional education acceptance and commitment therapy, motivational interviewing, as well as binge eating and body image fundamentals. Okay, I'm going to link her website and everything else of hers underneath. Okay, so don't worry, it's all accessible. Welcome, Gillian. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, Skylar. I am so excited to be able to chat with you and chat with your audience because I think that your audience probably really understands the importance of having the mind-body connection. And I think that already understanding that is going to be so important for this conversation. And a little bit about me. I'm American. I'm from California. I live in Barcelona, Spain. And the reason why my work is so important to me is because I struggled with food in my body for most of my life. And I have memories of my mom, going to Weight Watchers meetings. She would take me with her when I was like 4 years old. And so food and body has always been a sort of really big part of my life. And it was only until I actually had some pretty problematic issues with my health because I was overtraining and under eating and had this horrible relationship with food that I took it upon myself to really understand the importance of listening to your body, working to heal your hormones in a way that actually aligns with the type of life you want to live. And so that is sort of the basis for a lot of the work that I do with clients, is helping them find stability in their nutrition that also helps them live a really freaking amazing life.
It's incredible how much energy changes everything, and health is the core of all energy.
It really is. It really is. It's so funny that you say that because I smile to myself so much. And I have these moments throughout the day where I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so proud of myself for doing the work to improve my relationship with food. I mean, not just even being so grateful for the fact that I have a healthy menstrual cycle after I didn't have a cycle for 4 years. Wow. And my hair was falling out. I was cold all the time. I would wake up in the middle of the night starving. And now I sort of catch myself throughout the day and I'll be dancing in my hallway and singing songs to my dog. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am just such a more fun, energetic person now that I actually nourish myself with energy and eat food that I enjoy. And it's just such an incredible feeling to reflect on how far I've come.
What you're talking about is such an incredible shift. And this is one of the things I felt about you when I was looking over your stuff, not just your bio, but your actual website, is you're really hardcore in alignment. There's nothing superficial about this. And I love that, because I always teach my audience that there's a huge gap between beauty standards and health standards. There's a huge difference, and they get so confused. So how have you kind of navigated that, especially with women, when there's such they're completely different things, but they come across as the same thing, and a lot of advertising, but they're completely different things. So how did you navigate that to get this kind of rock hard alignment?
Wow, that is maybe one of the best questions I've ever been asked. And honestly, a lot of it had to do with connecting with my core values. And people hear me talk about core values and they're like, what does that have to do with my eating habits? And I'll give you an example. So for me, when I quote unquote looked the best or the fittest, was when I was living completely out of alignment with my core values. So my core values, I actually have them written on a Post-it on my wall, just because I love being able to see that every day. And so my main core values, obviously we have things that are of lesser importance, are connection, curiosity, freedom, and creativity. And for me, being able to sort of pause and be like, wait a minute, I'm not practicing creativity in my life at all. My connections are horrible. Can I curse on this podcast?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So I was like, my connections are fucking terrible. I'm lonely. And I think also a lot of this is like, we can't not bring in the conversation around like, as a female, part of our worth has been determined by like, can you get a partner? Yeah. Like, can you have a partner? Can you find someone to be attracted to you? And for me, like, I'm about to turn 36. I'm now in a loving, absolutely incredible relationship. However, I had a very shitty and like tumultuous dating history. And so I think when we look at like beauty and health standards, I was trying so hard to reach this beauty standard that my health standards, and when we talk about health standards, physical health and mental health need to be considered together. We cannot say like, I am physically healthy, but I'm not taking a look at my mental health. And for me, both my physical health and my mental health were not great. Yeah. And so the sort of big turning point for me was being like, I say that these things are really important to me. I say that these core values are really important to me, but I don't live those core values at all in my day-to-day, because my life is revolving around like, am I eating the amount of calories I should be eating? Like, am I, making sure to avoid temptation? Am I going to the gym and, training the hours that I need to be training in the gym? And I'm like not a boring person. And I was pretty freaking boring at that period of my life. And I think that anyone listening that's like been consumed by diet culture can understand that like your personality gets like tamped down because your brain is so full of, oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat that. Oh my God, I should eat that. Oh my God, wait, how many calories are in this? Wait, how much do I weigh today? How do I look? And so for me, sort of, I guess, coming to the end of your question, how did I navigate that was being aware of like, I'm not acting in accordance with my core values and asking myself, like, what am I actually trying to achieve here? Because even if I do, find this partner that loves me and thinks I'm beautiful, like, I'm not gonna have fun with them. I'm not gonna be able to like enjoy sex with them because I literally had no sex drive. Yeah. And so if I want to be this person that I imagine myself being, like, I have to start acting like it. And so some of those things were like, I'm going to invest more in my relationships. And other things were, I need to actually start eating more food and eating enough food to feel satisfied, because when you're satisfied with what you eat physically and mentally, you're a lot less likely to be constantly thinking about food all the time.
What you've just said, actually, this is going to be like such a juicy podcast, guys, just so you know, because not only am I getting excited, but I'm getting questions here I've never asked anybody before. So this is going to be fun. So what just came to me is that because I'm a new mom, I've got a 2-year-old, right? One of the things that's been very big in both resolving women's health conditions is addressing the invisible load.
Oh right? My gosh.
But what you're discussing is something I never considered, but the way that you put words to it was so goddamn beautiful, because you just verbalized the invisible load around diet culture and beauty standards, which is the constantly, what do I eat? Do I look good enough? Am I worthy of being attractive? Am I lovable all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? And it's huge, because women cannot starve themselves both physically and emotionally, and like you said, have balanced hormones or a balanced sexuality or balanced fertility. Most health, and especially health studies, were based around men entirely, and women weren't even involved in those studies. So I've never thought of that before. So when you this load, how did it shift for you from, because you said it was all the time, and now what's it like when you're dealing with your health and your nutrition and your balance,
Yeah. So I talk to my clients about this a lot, because a lot of the women that I work with come to me and they're like, I think about food all the time. I'm either like eating like a toddler, or I am trying to be absolutely perfect with what I eat. And so the way that I describe the work that I do is helping them find that like middle ground where they care about their physical and mental health, but they also care about living a really fun life. And so the way that I talk to them about it is kind of like, right now, it might be like someone screaming at you in your head. And so it's like a yell. It's like, don't eat that, you shouldn't do this, you're such a failure. And it's like a scream. And what we learn to do, and this is why mindset and like thought strategies and like understanding your brain is so important for this whole process, is because those thoughts, I don't believe, ever truly disappear. They just go from being a yell to being a whisper. And so, for example, Now, like I feel like I have a pretty good body image. Like I look in the mirror and like, it's either like, nah, I don't really care, or, oh, I like how I look today. But I still have some days where I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh God, like what is happening? Like you look terrible. And the difference is, it's not that like, and this is, I think, a huge misconception is people think that when you do the work on your relationship with food, on your nutrition, on your mindset, is like, oh, I don't have these things anymore. No, you just get good at dealing with it. And you get really good at that. Instead of having like a 20-minute debate over whether you should eat the cookie, it becomes like a quick check-in with yourself of like, do I want the cookie? Is it going to be satisfying? Like, how is this going to leave me feeling when I'm finished? And that takes like 2 seconds. And so if it was taking up, let's say throughout the day, and I've actually done these sort of calculations with my clients where it's like, how much time are you currently spending thinking about food in your body? Let's say someone comes to me and it's like, over the course of the day, 4 hours. Cool. Yeah. If we can shrink that into like 20 to 30 minutes, like that's pretty normal. Like we have to think about what we eat. Like that requires some sort of thought. Yeah. And appearance, we live an embodied life. We can't ignore the fact that we have an appearance. And there's nothing wrong with caring about what you look like. I think the important part and the way to navigate this is understanding that like what you look like is not the most important thing about you. And so I think a question that can probably help your listeners, and this is a question that I ask new clients all the time, is what do you value about the people that you care about? And what do you think they value about you? Yeah. And when you answer that question, the noise that's telling you that all of these things matter starts to get a little bit quieter. And of course, there's like a bunch of different skills. So I talk a lot about skill building. There's a lot of different skills that we build in order for you to manage that voice. Because like I said, I went with my mom to Weight Watchers when I was 4 years old. So that means I had like decades of like body image and food bullshit to deal with. And so learning how to manage those thoughts when they come up just gives you a sense of confidence and competence in yourself. Because right now you might not have any skills to deal with those thoughts. And that's why they feel like a scream instead of a whisper.
I'm going to break, there's two or three very valuable things that I'm going to summarize and just break it down because that helps them.
100%. I love that.
Me too. So the first thing is that a lot of these patterns around body image and health are generational. So they come down the family line, and I had the exact same thing. And I remember I wasn't as young as you, but it really kicked in around my teens. Because I went from being a thin child to being I had an autoimmune disease. I had an underactive thyroid, but it took them 2 years to diagnose it. So suddenly I was packing on the weight, and I was dragged to every Slim Fast meeting. The calories were restricted. Everything was just cut out. I remember being sent up a mountain with a Slim Fast bar.
Oh my gosh.
Because my mother believed that the social price of being overweight was so high. And she was so terrified of the bullying that would come, and that she thought it was a cheaper, when parents are like, I'll beat them so other people don't.
Yeah.
If you think fatism is bad now in our culture, the 70s, 60s, it was so bad, particularly because my family's Brazilian, it was so bad. They were so cruel to women that were overweight. It was hardcore stuff. It was what I think was so powerful for my journey around mindset was understanding that this stuff was all lies. It wasn't truth. It wasn't how you get healthy. It wasn't how you get beautiful, right? Because beauty is an energy. It's not just a state of being. It's who you are. It's not your body and what it looks like, right? But it's we're getting a bit into woo-woo energy there. But then we're kind of moving into this space where we're talking about understanding that voice gets quieter, but because we're constantly being programmed every day. Like if the average person listens to 200 to 300 ads a day, telling them in subliminal psychological programming that they are not beautiful enough, that they are not enough, right? Whether it's the Tampax ad or the makeup ad or which we think are different, but it's not. The message is the same. You need my product to be worthy. You need my product to be beautiful, right? Perfume ad, makeup ad. You added up 300 a day, even if you're just scrolling Instagram or TikTok. And we're going, why doesn't this voice go away? And it's like, well, because it's proactively being nurtured. right? The reason we have to do like little bits of work consistently is because the moment you turn on the TV, the moment you go into your phone, you are proactively being told that you are not enough. So fear is the loud screaming voice, and it's coming in all the time. And then we get to kind of go, no, I don't really want that in there. But you fall asleep in the car, you fall asleep in front of the TV, and that's being programmed. Right. So those are three huge areas. I'll let you choose which one you want to dive into because they were really juicy topics. But how do you navigate those with your clients and address those as you're moving through the mindset work?
Yeah. I mean, I think you brought up something really important is that, like you said, the word lies. And I think what it is that we often take our thoughts as fact, and our thoughts are not facts. And this is actually one of the things that comes up a lot in my client sessions is learning a skill called cognitive diffusion. And this is a skill that is talked a lot about in acceptance and commitment therapy. If you are someone that is in therapy, you may have talked about this with your therapist, and it is a mindset skill. And it's essentially the skill of understanding that, like, the thoughts that I have, those are not data. They are simply thoughts. And so we can actually separate ourselves from them and observe them. And I like to think almost like our brain is a fishbowl and our thoughts are just like a ton of fish in the bowl. And so if we can use the skill of cognitive diffusion, which a really simple way to do this is to just say, I am having the thought that, like, let's say, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. You can take that and say, I'm having the thought that I'm fat. That creates a tiny bit of distance between that thought, and you can actually take it out and observe it. And we can start to think critically about the way that we're thinking. And we can also, like, while yes, so I think I heard it put really, really well. It was like, it's not our fault that we feel the way that we do about our bodies, but it is our responsibility to change it. And I think that summed it up really well, because it's like, I think we can often take the victim mentality of like, well, what can I do about it? Like, I have to look this way because nobody's going to love me. And so part of me is like, no, go the like evidence-based route. Because the fact is like, there is a lot of evidence to support that mindful eating behaviors, intuitive eating behaviors, and like non-diet behaviors support overall feelings of well-being in your body, support overall health, even support overall weight management. But also I can say in my personal experience, I've gained weight. I have no idea how much weight I've gained. You can't see me probably right now, if you're listening to this in a podcast. I'm still a quote unquote straight size human. And so I know that I have that privilege, but my body has changed significantly since I was in this pursuit of the quote unquote perfect body. However, my self-worth has also increased significantly, mostly because I stopped looking for self-worth in appearance. And what happened is like that fear that we talked about of like, I'm not going to be loved, I'm not going to be worthy, whatever. It actually, like, that fear, I continued to feed it when I was stuck in this belief of like, I need to look like this, otherwise no one's going to love me, is like, I fed that. And when I stopped feeding it intentionally, I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. It was an intentional, like, nope, fuck this. This is not how I'm going to live my life. And my quote unquote attractiveness, I have felt more attractive since gaining weight, since letting go of those ideals, and actually have had more quote unquote success in sort of like the realm of dating and friendships and connections, because I've put so much more effort into who I am as a human and how can I like feel my best? How do I nourish myself? How do I open up brain space for stuff that isn't food and body? And so it's like, we have this belief that, oh, well, this person's not going to find me attractive. It's like, well, your body's going to change for the rest of your life. So yes, we want to be with someone that we find physically attractive, but like who we are as a person is so much more important than the beauty industry leads us to believe.
It's such a huge deal. It's like, it's such a huge deal. And there's so many things that people don't consider, but it's such a big fear for, I would say, for both men and women. And it's only something I've become more aware of because I've got 3 older stepkids and then my bubba. And particularly my older stepson, he went through body dysmorphia. He went through like huge amounts of pressure to, get the 6-pack and get the muscles, and the zero self-esteem on who I am as a person, everything being about appearance and everything being about finances. And that's when I was like, okay, this whole because their generation is more Instagram, whereas ours was kind of like more Facebook kind of peeking in,
Yeah.
Whereas theirs is like they've had it since they were teens. They've had their phones since they were 10. It's a constant bombardment. But this idea that our worth, like you said, is based on the body count, right? Because your body will change throughout your whole life. If you're a woman for many other reasons than than just what you eat or what you don't eat. For starters, your water weight fluctuates monthly based on your estrogen levels, not having nothing to do with what you eat or how much you work out. And then if you include pregnancy in the process, it's a whole different beast. And if you believe that your lovability is based on your body changing, it creates a crisis of identity that will then create your worst fear, because it's not about how you look so much as about who you are.
Yeah.
You don't know who you are. How can someone love you? Because there's no one there to find.
So I do want to mention something, because I think that this ties into a lot of like the generational trauma that we talked about. Yeah. Is that like, you may have been told as a child that like or either told or insinuated via actions by your parents or by family members, like, I'll love you more if you weigh less, or I'll love you, or I'll love you more if you grow tall. I don't know, a million different things. And so I think a big part of this is like being able to, again, like separate thought from fact, and also realize that like your job as a human is to continue to grow and evolve. And so like, even though you've held these beliefs, you can choose to start working towards not having those beliefs anymore, which doesn't mean like, I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm not telling you that like, I'm again, like in my mid 30s, like I was really able to overcome a lot of these struggles, like at 30 years old. So it's not like all of a sudden one day you're gonna be like, oh, cool, like I don't buy into diet culture anymore. Okay, great. Let's continue on with my life. But it's like a really interesting process if you decide that you're willing to kind of throw yourself in and understand like, what is it that makes me me, and how do I continue to act in a way that makes me the most me that I can be.
Going like what you said at the very beginning around core values, it's how I navigate everything in my life, because so much of integrity comes from, is this about my values and me being authentically who I am? Or is this about people pleasing? Is this about money? Is this about popularity? Is this about, well, when you constantly check in with your values, and I use it for everything from behavior to health to it helps so much to have like that solid, barrier to check beliefs against. And particularly, gosh, have you heard Brené Brown?
I've probably consumed every piece of content Brené Brown has ever made,
right? So when so for guys, if you haven't, some of you will and some of you haven't, but for those of you who haven't, when she talks about, she's doing the book, like the book, The Gifts of Imperfection, but there's a whole section in there around her family moving around so much because she was an army brat, and her wanting to belong so bad because she wanted to be in the teams at school, and her being 10 years old and going on the cabbage diet, right? Because of the weigh-ins and the thinness and so much for boys and for them as well. But they're the opposite. So where we're like, we're too fat, they're like, I don't have enough muscle, right? And they're like pinching their arms because they're like, if I'm not big enough, I don't get into the team, I won't belong. And most of our trauma, especially when I'm working with people, comes from this fear of, if I'm not thin enough, I won't belong. If I'm not thin enough, I won't be lovable. And it is unconscious. Most of it, nobody ever said, oh, they should never have said this to you. When you stood on the scales in front of an entire class, whether it was to get into a ballet group or into a cheerleading squad or into, what's it called? The Miss pageant, whatever, or the singing competition, right? Or when you were like, given the dress to fit into, all of that counts as body image or beauty standards trauma, especially if it was never even a conversation or words put around it so you could navigate it as a kid. So what the beginning of dismantling this belief structure is realizing that those are beliefs. Even if they are social standards and contracts, they are still beliefs that are adopted by the collective consciousness. Right. And then it's kind of looking at, where did this start for me? What is my story around this? And then you can take ownership of that story, because that's the next part that I love about about Brené Brown is that if you cannot own your story, then you hustle for worthiness, right? So what is your food story? What is your health story? What is your beauty standards story? And start untangling so that you can find your values. You'd be like, okay, that's what they chose for me. What do I choose for me? Who do I want to be in that space? That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that you put it that way. And I think a lot about this, like belonging versus fitting in. And also what you said before about like using your values as sort of a guiding, like a North Star for your decisions. And I wanted to give a little bit of context because I think sometimes when people like, if individuals aren't really familiar with their core values, I think it's something that's often talked about a lot in business, but not necessarily in your personal life. And one of the reasons that this can be so powerful is it can give you direction. And a lot of us feel lost. Like a lot of us are sort of like, oh, I'm making these decisions, but I don't know if they kind of sit right with me, or we don't even ever really check in, right? You know, we have like a quote unquote goal weight because that's what our mom's goal weight was, or because that's the size pants that we fit in at like this time in our lives. And so when it comes specifically down to like nutrition and body image and how we interact with our bodies in general, we can look at, I'll take connection, for example, which I mentioned is one of my values. When we look at dieting often really limits our connection. Why? Because we are trying to make sure we're eating perfectly. We're the person like bringing Tupperware to the family party, or we're the person that's like, oh, I'm not going to go to this event because there's, XYZ food there, or not getting ice cream with your family because, you can't have that many calories. And so in many ways, dieting not only disconnects us from the people around us, but it also disconnects us from ourselves, because dieting gives you a set of external rules to follow for your nutrition rather than using the internal cues that can be actually really fucked up if you've dieted for a long time, and it takes some reestablishing of those cues. But when we look at like, okay, cool. So what are decisions that align with my value of connection when it comes to food? Is like, maybe you say, hey, you know what? I am going to say yes to having ice cream with my family because that is an experience that I really value. And so this is where having skills to make that fit into your life, if, healthful eating is important to you, is like, hey, you know what? Having ice cream with my family is really important for connection. I'm going to choose to have a smaller serving of ice cream. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. And I'm going to feel so good and so connected with my family after that. And that is the kind of decision that aligns with your values and brings a lot of value to your life. Whereas I think we often get really stuck in this sort of like all or nothing. Like I'm either perfectly on my diet and controlling my body, or I am enjoying my life. And finding that balance through using your values is so powerful. And this is,
I'm going to put a little caveat on here because you guys are used to listening to me talk about diet for health purposes, right? So we're talking about like diet and nutrition for like body image and resolving generational and beauty trauma. It's a whole different bag of trauma if you eat something is going to throw you into like a diabetic fit or trigger your autism, or so. This is like, just so you know, I see you guys with your neurodivergence, and we're speaking indirectly, but we're like, please don't mess with your diets or whatever based on what we're saying. If there's a different standards, right, or different consequence for you than there's for everyone else, just in case. Nice little caveat, trigger warning.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think, so diet is like just what you eat. Dieting, like the act of dieting. I think when I speak about dieting, that is more of like the diet culture approach. Whereas like your diet, like I have a diet, it's the food that I eat on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where I'm going with that. Whereas like if you're making choices about what you eat based on your health necessities, that's different. Because I imagine health is a value of yours. You value your health. And so if you are making food decisions because they align with that value of health, it's a lot different than saying I'm restricting X, Y, or Z food because I'm afraid that I'm going to gain weight.